We are back on Morning Line, our final segment this morning with Ken Paulson, director of the Free Speech Center at MTSU. We're talking First Amendment, which would make sense with Ken. And, at this point, as we're wrapping up the show, if you've been listening, obviously we have some concerns, and he does, with, the future of things and how they go and the importance of a free press and the media. Ken, so as we sit here now today, what is your take on where we go from here? I mean, as you said, if the media is discounted, and I guess I should say again, I'm sorry, news organizations are discounted, I mean, that doesn't bode well for our democracy. How do you see this playing out moving forward? And what does hearten me, when you said earlier, we saw a lot what's happened over the past 2 presidential administrations and the like, with fake news and the like. But it's not new. You're right. It's not like this is some development by these politicians today. He was back with Spiro Agnew and others, and we survived that. What about moving forward?
Well, one of the challenges we have as a nation is that we do not very effectively teach our young people critical thinking or the basics of civics. And this is not the fault of teachers. It is, a lot of curricula are dictated. And I'm not an expert in education, so I don't mean to point fingers here. But, if we today offered a giant big screen TV out front of your studio for anybody who could recite the Pledge of Allegiance, you would be giving them 60 away an hour.
Yep.
Everyone knows the Pledge of Allegiance. But why is it that we don't have young people who know the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment? Those 5 freedoms are what set us apart from every other nation on the planet. It is not a coincidence that the most vibrant, dynamic, powerful, learned nation in the history of the world is also the most free. That is what we need to be teaching. That is why I need to be patriotic. People revere the flag who cannot tell you what the First Amendment says. Those are mixed priorities. And if you're a real patriot, you know how America works, what the Constitution stands for, and what our principles are. And we need to do a better job at imparting those lessons in America's schools. But I have to tell you, it is up to the legislatures to do that, because teachers are under enormous pressure. We need to give them the license to teach America, to teach the lessons of America in classrooms. Again, almost everything I preach about here, every time I get up on a soapbox, I've done what I sort of can within my resources. So we just published a book called The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. And it's written for 6th graders through high school. It's totally free of charge. Any teacher can have a copy. We also can provide digital copies. So it's that kind of work we're doing. By the way, if anyone would like a copy of that, you can reach out to us at Free Speech Center at MTSU.edu. That is our email address. But any educator would like a copy of that, we can provide copies for your students as well. But that's what we need. We need to be teaching those lessons at that age, because candidly, the folks out there who are talking about fake news, there is no way to fix them. Yeah. There is no way to enlighten them. The only way you can do this is to teach democracy from the ground up.
Yep, the next generation. And you're a professor at MTSU, and teaching everyone that is very important, especially journalists. I wanted to get your take on this, what you see. I know, having been, with several newspapers over the years and in the news business, I was reading a survey just this morning that TV news directors across the country are having a difficult time finding qualified applicants for reporter positions. They have them out there, and they're getting the 2 or 3. I mean, now, Nashville and our station here, when we have an opening, everyone knows this station as good as we get a lot of applicants. But there are stations around the country right now that are having trouble finding qualified folks. And I'm just worried that maybe not as many people taking it seriously are getting into the news biz, because as opposed to being news persons, they just want to be social influencers and aren't going to bother with learning how to become good journalists. I mean, we need to have a next generation of good journalists.
Well, right. And as the former dean of the College of Media and Entertainment at MTSU, I oversaw a journalism school as well. I think a couple things are happening. And again, I sound awfully negative about schools, but boy, the spelling skills students come to us with, and the presentation skills are just not there.
Nope.
And so I think, how many times have you read a newspaper in the last week where you saw prominent typos, or looked up at a billboard that somebody paid for, and there's a letter missing in the in the billboard.
Yep.
So there are those aspects. But I have to tell you this.
I don't want to put you on the spot. How do you spell whoa? Like, whoa, baby. How would you spell whoa? Like if you're riding a horse, whoa. How do you spell that?
I would spell it W-O-A-H, but I don't think there's a Webster's dictionary.
I know,
spelling
but
of
I
that.
think the proper spelling is W-H-O-A, isn't it? I'm just saying, that's where it gets mad. The reason I brought it up is I was at the Titans game this weekend, and my wife, who's a terrific copy editor and had done that for years, she now works for Disney, but she looked up and they had W-O-A-H. And she goes, well, that's now what most people think. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but she goes, the real spelling, at least going back, was W-H-O-A. Things just change because that's what people accept.
I've seen both, but candidly, I spent a lot of time in my youth reading comic books. So,
okay. Yeah, me too.
But yeah, I will tell you that's the spelling of woe is the least concerned on democracy of anything.
I think you're right.
I'm relieved to tell you that.
Okay. It's just a symptom, a small
but what I want. The point I wanted to make that's really very positive is that, as you know, there is no better job in the world than being a journalist. And every day is different. The energy level is fantastic. You feel like you have a voice and participation in American society. And so I think it's really just a matter of making sure that we open that pipeline enough so that we get, new and talented people in the profession. There still aren't enough journalists of color in Americans' newspapers and news organizations. There's talent out there. I think perhaps media roles collectively are not as glamorous as they once were, but it's still a pretty special profession, and we just need to make sure young people know that.
Oh, it is, and I can speak. It's a wonderful career. Just one aspect of that, and maybe it's because of the way things have changed with social media, is I think one reason they're having trouble finding is it's not a lot of money, at least not starting out. I mean, is there a way to make a living in the news media these days? Because I got to be honest with you, the pay scale has slipped, and that's an issue here as well. This business is changing a lot, and it's going more online. Our newscasts eventually may be completely on social media, Roku, things like that. But what do you think about, is it going to be something where people can make a good living at it?
Well, historically, people have made an adequate living. I mean, if they got to the networks, they've got to large national newspapers, they made out well. It's always been a lower paid kind of role. And I don't see that turning around dramatically because the profit margins are not what we used to experience. And look at the pressures on broadcast stations like yours. Suddenly, there's competition globally, everywhere, so the pie gets split. All I can do is share my personal philosophy that to be the best, you have to pay well, and we should be paying journalists more. We should be paying police officers more, first responders more. To get the best and brightest, you have to pay that way. That has been a problem in journalism for a long time, and I'm concerned that will not turn around anytime soon.
Yeah, you're not going to get rich in this business, but as you say, it can be an amazing field to be in. And so, well, let's just remember that. I like your idea that news organizations may be doing a better job of rehabbing image. Do you have any quick suggestion on how we can do that in the local media here, be it the TV or newspapers? What would be an easy first step to maybe try to rehab that image in some ways?
Well, I would try to devote, first of all, your show is an excellent way of doing that, not to pander here, but, spending time with the newsmaker, asking thoughtful questions and providing insight, taking the time to ask questions that otherwise you wouldn't have time for. Television is a difficult medium because although you are journalists of significant integrity, great integrity, there's always the visual that's driving it. And so it'd be hard to do an analysis of the budget. So what you're doing there is outstanding. I also think you could devote a half an hour once a month to tell the story behind the story, something you report on intensively, and explain how it comes together. People don't understand the culture of a newsroom is really, we're the good guys, as self-serving as that is. We're trying to get it right. We are careful. And when people point to an error in the newspaper and say, see, they're not professional. No, that means they're professional. They're trying to do their best to keep the record straight. So news organizations, I also mentioned the Tennessean. I think David Plazas, who is the editorial page editor there, does a fantastic job of going behind the scenes and explaining what is really at stake. Those are the voices in American journalism we really need now.
Boy, you're so right. I'm glad you made that point. Look, journalists, like everyone else, make mistakes. And if we make a mistake on air, okay, it's not because we're afraid we're going to get sued. Oftentimes we don't even hear from who we made the mistake about. We will correct it. And that doesn't mean we've been sloppy. It means we caught it. It means, like humans, we make a mistake. And you are so right. And I think we've done some of this to a degree, and we need to do more of it. You're absolutely right. To have a little window into our morning news meeting. To and put a little piece together to show the viewership, all right, this is how it goes in the morning meeting. There's not someone telling you just do this side. There's a discussion, we lay it out, we discuss the news of the day, and we assign stories. And that's how it works, with no other agenda into what we think is the important news of the day that matters to our viewers.
Absolutely.
Lay it out there. Ken, thank you so much for coming on. I could talk to you forever. You're terrific. I've followed you, of course, since you were with the Freedom Forum and now out there at MTSU and all that you've done. We need people like you and Al Tompkins and others to continue waving the flag for what is best for the news business and for First Amendment freedoms. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Right. We'll talk again. Well, that is a wrap, folks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, programming note about tomorrow right after this.